What's up guys, welcome back to my video, JSig Poker. This is my 7th vlog now, and I'm gonna play some 5-5 PLO tonight. It's actually a home game, and they actually gonna let me record this time, so you guys will be able to see the whole cards. Now I'm gonna be doing 2 bullets of $500. I have a $74,000 bankroll, and so I have a stop loss of $1,000 each night, a little bit around there, and I have probably close to a 20 big blind per 100 hand edge over pretty much most of the games I play in, including at the casino. So I'll pretty much never go broke like this. Now, today's goal is to try and play for 4 hours, maybe 5. I don't want to play too long because it's already late in the night. It's 10:30 and I'm starting late just because I've been busy all day. Also, I wanted to give you guys an update on what happened last session. In my last vlog, I actually bought it for $500. I played PLO and I actually got down to my last $200, but thankfully we ended up running that up to around $2,300 and won around $1,700. And this is my PLO graph. This is how much I'm up overall in the last 3 months or 2.5 months. I'm up a little over $40,000. I'm coming off a $10,000 downswing, and yesterday was probably one of my first winning sessions in a while. So hopefully we can keep that up and now go on the upswing, because last time we went on a 10K downer, we ended up winning, I think, over 20 to 30K. So here we go, boys. Let's give it a shot. So there wasn't a seat open right away for PLO, so I decided to play some 5-10 no limit while I waited. And I'm glad I did, because in this hand we looked down at Queen Jack of Spades from the small blind, and after the button limps, I raised it to $50. The big blind folds and the button calls, so there's $110 in the middle going to a flop, and it's Ace Jack 5 Rainbow with the Ace of Spades. I range bet here as I have all the strongest Ace-X hands and sets, so I bet 1/3 to $35. And I notice a lot of players are seeing these small bets as a sign of weakness at first, and a lot of them have actually played back at me. So he decides to raise to $100.
That's suspicious.
His line makes no sense so far, as he should be raising all suited Ace 5 combos, pocket 5s, Ace Jack, pocket Jacks, and pocket Aces on the button. So he's really only representing Ace 5 offsuit here, so I decide to make the call. And the turn is a great one because it's the Queen of Diamonds. So we make 2 pair, and of course I decide to check to let him bet and bluff, and he does so by betting $225. I'm definitely not folding on this turn. I make the call, and the river is a 6 of clubs. I check again, hoping he bets as a bluff, and he does. He bets $325. I don't take too long before making the call, and he asks me if I hit any of that. I tell him I have 2 pair, and we end up winning a nice $1,500 pot after my opponent makes a very questionable play. Let's go, baby. So now I'm up over $700 at no limit. I decide to play a few more hands until a PLO seat just opens up. So I do take a seat, and I rebuy with $500. And in the first hand I play, I look down at Ace 10 5-6 with the Ace 10 of clubs, and being 7-handed under the gun in a soft lineup, I decide to open to $40. As I have a nut suit, plus they're all decently connected. The cutoff and button calls, so there's 135 in the middle, and it's 3 ways to a flop. And the flop is amazing. It's the Deuce 4 of clubs and the 7 of spades.
So excited!
We flop an open-ended straight draw with the nut flush draw, and I pot to 135. The cutoff folds, and the button, who is loose passive, makes the call, so there's 405 in the middle, and it's heads up going to a turn. And the turn cannot come any better. It's the 3 of diamonds. So now we make the absolute nuts with the straight, plus a nut flush redraw. I actually contemplated checking here to let her potentially get there with lower flush draws, but I also knew that she calls all-ins very light, so if there's no more action, plus with any pair flush draw or straight draw, I just didn't think she was folding. So I decided to just move all in for $325. She snap calls, and the river comes a Jack of clubs. We make the nuts, even though we already had it on the turn. I table over my hand, and she shows ace king jack 9 with the king 9 of clubs with a rivered king high flush. And we take down a nice $1,000 pot after another one of our opponents makes a very questionable play. Things are getting really good here, you guys. Hopefully we can keep this up. Okay, so it's been a great start so far. We're up around $1,000 to start the night, and now we look down at king, queen, jack 8 with the king, jack, and queen of spades. Two players limp in, the small blind limps in, and we happily check our option from the big blind. And the flop comes ace, queen of hearts with the 8 of diamonds. We flop bottom 2 with the gut shot, but it's not strong enough to bet 4 ways, so I decide to check. It gets checked around, and the turn is a 4 of spades. And it's still not strong enough for us to bet because now ace 4 gets there, and someone could have easily checked back hands like ace 8 on the flop. So I decide to check again, and luckily it gets checked around one more time. Now I'm hoping the river comes a good card for us, and it's probably the best one there is. It's the 8 of spades. So we fill up, and now I'm hoping someone else has an 8 in their hand. Lucky for us, the small blind bets pot. We most likely have him beat, as he would have bet all of his ace queen or pocket aces hands at some point. So of course I repot to 160, and he actually goes all in for 440. I cannot believe my eyes here, because he thought we were bowling him from a hand earlier where I actually re-raised him on the river with quads, and he folded. I snap call, and he shows 8-4 jack 9 for a smaller full house, and we win a nice $920 pot in a limped pot. So there hasn't been much action, and I feel like the game's dying down a little bit until a new player sits my direct right with $1,000, and he starts to straddle, raise, and bet every flop, turn, and river for almost 2 to 3 orbits. I decide it's time to top up to around $2,000 to try and cover him, hoping to stack this new fish. And in this hand, I look down at king jack jack 3 with the king jack of spades. He raises to $50, and I decide to call here. The small blind calls, and the big blind repots to $250.
Shit just went from 0 to 100 real fucking quick.
The cutoff calls, and being deep and having position on the fish, I call, as our hand is either going to be really easy to call or easy to fold on flops. For example, if we flop top set, we can happily get it in, or a set with the flush draw, or potentially 2 pair with the flush draw. We can also flop the nuts with a flush draw and potentially have a lot of his hands dominated. I'm not too worried about the big blind's range since she's short and plays face up, and she's fairly easy to play against. So the small blind calls as well. So there is now $1,000 in the middle, and it's 4 ways to a flop. And we bink because the flop comes king jack 4 with 2 hearts. We flop middle set, and I'm praying someone piles it in here. It gets checked to me, and there's only one play here with our stack size. We pot for $1,000, almost putting us all in. We want to protect from all the straight draws and flush draws that are out there. And fortunately for us, everyone folds pretty quickly, and we win a very nice $1,000 pot, not even going to showdown. Now we're getting somewhere. We're playing well so far, and this time I look down at a very pretty ace king jack with the king jack of clubs, and after the hijack limps in, I raise it up to $50. The button, who's visibly starting to tilt, calls, and the hijack calls. So there's 165 in the middle, and it's 3 ways to a flop, and it comes ace 8-9 with 2 spades.
Here comes the money.
We flop top set. It gets checked to me, and on this board there's a lot of draws, and with just top set, I pot to 165. The button doesn't take long before calling, so I'm putting him on obviously a draw, straight draw plus flush draw, or a wrap of some sort. And there's now 495 in the middle, going to a turn. It's a pretty good card. It's the 6 of clubs. So a lot of draws did miss here, and with the SPR, it's time to put him all in for his last $300, and he snap calls. This particular player really wanted to run it twice, and in a home game, it's best to keep the players happy and playing, in my opinion. So I do oblige, and he shows us 10-7-8-5 for just a naked straight draw on the flop that got there on the turn. The river on the first run out comes a king of hearts, and the river on the second one is the deuce of clubs. We do not fill up on either board, and we end up losing over $1,000 pot with top set. Looking for a little bit of redemption, I look down at ace king 2 with the king deuce of hearts. Under the gun limps, and the same villain who's been raising every hand makes it $50. I repot to 175, and the under the gun and villain both call. Now I'm once again praying for a good flop here to hopefully stack this player in a massive pot, plus we have position and we're on the button. And it's not the worst flop, but it's not the best flop. It's queen 5-5 rainbow. Now the villain is going to have way more 5x hands in his range than ours, so when it gets checked around to me, I decide to pot control and check back, as we really don't need to protect our hand. The turn comes a 10 of clubs, so it brings a backdoor flush draw out there. And after the under the gun player checks, the villain bets very large for 325. Now seeing that I have the ace of clubs in my hand, I know it's not a good spot because it takes away some of the bluffs that he can have, like nut flush draws. But with his frequency of barreling, I know there are still a lot of hands we can potentially beat, like any flush draw or straight draw. So I reluctantly make the call, hoping he slows down on the river. There's $1,100 in the middle, and the river is a terrible one. It's the 8 of clubs, so now a lot of draws get there, pretty much every draw, and he immediately bets the pot. I did not think he was bluffing because once I call the turn, I can easily have overpairs with flush draws that got there. That's a heavy part of my range. So I pretty quickly make the fold, and he shows 4-4-5-7 for just 3 of a kind. And I guess he was trying to bluff me by repping a full house in case I hit a flush, but that's pretty bad in my opinion because his image is so loose that if I do hit a flush, I'm probably going to call at that point. But on the other end, I love it because I now know in the long run, he's going to be firing pretty much a lot of his range there, and I can easily call him with good hands that I made. Now the fish is on a heater and he's winning every hand, which is actually great for us because we know eventually his luck is going to run out. And in this hand, I look down at ace king 10 with the king 10 of clubs, and after it goes limped around, he raises to $70 from the small blind. I bump it up to $250 from the big blind to isolate him. Everyone else folds, but he makes the call, so there's $540 in the middle. And again, I'm hoping for a good flop to finally stack this guy, but the flop is terrible because it comes 6-8-7 rainbow. He checks, and on this flop, he should actually be leading a lot of his hands because my big blind versus small blind 3 betting range with a bunch of limpers is not going to hit this board a lot of the time. So if he has any pair with the straight draw, 2 pair, blockers, any made hand like a straight or set, he should be betting small here to put my aces in a tough spot. But of course, he's not thinking that far ahead. He's drunk and coked out of his mind. I check back the turn, and it comes a 4 of clubs, which gives me a backdoor flush draw. Okay, so a decent card for us. But he bets pot, and I simply don't have the odds to call here versus anything that hits this board. So unfortunately, I have to make the fold once again versus the fish. And he actually flips over King Jack 10-9 for a flop straight. And now I'm getting a little bit frustrated because I've lost every pot to him so far, and they've all been pretty big ones. But I also know I'm playing my hands well, so I continue playing even though I'm steaming a little bit. After losing every hand for the last couple of hours, I look down at ace king king 8 with 3 diamonds in my hand. We're 6-handed, and I limp in from under the gun, hoping to limp re-raise the villain, since this plays so poorly out of position in a bloated pot versus multiple players. We get 4 callers, and what do you know? He pots to $75 from the small blind. Now putting my plan into action, I repot to $270, essentially committing myself, and we actually get 2 players behind me to cold call who are trying to gamble with this fish, and when it gets back around to him, he goes all in, which puts all 3 of us all in too. We all call, so it's 4 ways to a flop. And there's almost $2,800 in the middle. At this point, I really am not liking my hand multi-way, but I'm just hoping to get lucky. Now, before the flop comes out, he shows queen, queen, 5-6 double suited with hearts and diamonds, which is actually a really good hand versus our hand. And I already have a feeling as to what's going to happen.
I'm gonna lose it! I'm gonna lose it!
He runs it once, and the flop, of course, comes 5-5-4 with 2 diamonds. He flops the world, 3 of a kind. The entire table is in awe. The turn comes a 6 of hearts, so now he has a full house, and the river bricks off with a jack of diamonds. Everyone else mucks, and he takes down the biggest pot of the night and stacks 3 players at the same time, including myself. Just wow. He's really running good, and after I was up $1,000, I'm now down $1,500 in a short amount of time. How tilting. But I decided to give it one last bullet, hoping the poker gods eventually come back on my side, and I decided to buy in for my last $500. After buying in again, the fish actually ends up giving away the majority of the stack in the next few hands, getting it in light with hands like 2 pair versus a nut straight. What a surprise. This time I looked down at ace 3-3-6 double suited, and with a couple of limpers, I decide to limp in on the button since we're short stacked and the villain is most likely going to raise again. And of course he does, from the small blind to $60. The low jack calls and I call, hoping to hit a flop, and what a miracle, it comes 8-2-3 rainbow. We flop middle set with the backdoor flush draw.
Finally!
The small blind checks and the low jack bets small to $60. Because this game is so crazy, and I know the fish is calling so many hands, plus I think someone can have a straight draw like 4-5 here that's not going to fold, I decided to just pot for my stack of 435. And surprise, surprise, the villain cold calls and the low jack folds. So I'm essentially all in here. The turn comes a jack of diamonds, and we're essentially all in. We flip over our 3 of a kind. River comes a 9 of clubs. Villain mucks, and we finally win a $1,100 pot versus him. Thank the poker gods for finally bringing justice to this old-time grinder.
You little punk. I'm not playing for the thrill of fucking victory here. I will rent, alimony, child support. I play for money.
I've been sitting on my leathery ass for the past 4 hours losing to this guy, and we finally make a comeback. Now shortly after that, the villain busts, and so we're only 3-handed and the game's about to break, but at least we doubled up and won some money back. And in this hand, I look down at queen, queen, 6-6 with the queen, 6 of clubs, and after the button straddles to $20, I raise to $60 from the cutoff, and he makes the call. The flop comes an interesting one. It's the jack 6 of diamonds and the 4 of hearts. So we flop middle set, but there's multiple flush draws and straight draws out there. But the villain is loose passive post flop, so I decide to just pot it to 135. He makes the call, so there's 4 of 5 in the middle, going to a turn. And I'm hoping for a brick, and it's the 10 of clubs. That's definitely one of the best turns for our hand. So I pot to 405, and he doesn't take long before moving all in. And of course I call. He asks if I want to run it once or twice. Now in the moment I ran it twice, but moving forward, if it's a pot smaller than 400 BBs at 510, and if the game's about to break, then I'm just going to run it once. Because I'm definitely rolled for this game, plus the night was coming to an end, and we just want to either book a nice win or lose. But we do run it twice, and the river comes a 6 of diamonds on the first run out and a jack of hearts on the second. He actually shows jack 10, 8, 9, so he had top 2 plus an open-ended straight draw on the turn. But we actually had his straight outs dominated because we had 2 of his queens. So he was only about 20 to 25% equity on the turn. So we actually ended up chopping, and shortly after that, the game ended up breaking. And I was kind of disappointed because if we did not run it twice, we would have been up $800. But oh well, that's how it goes. All right, guys, so we just ended the session. It's 4:44 a.m. and I just got home. We played almost 5 hours. And so I'm pretty happy with how things turned out, with how bad I ran in that PLO game. We were down around 1,700 at one point in that game. We ended up making a big comeback and only lost around $700 after losing all those hands. We picked up aces 4 times versus the really, really aggressive fish, and we just lost every time. He just hit a hand every single time. That was like 4 pots in a row. That's pretty much where all of our losing hands went. But that's okay. I'm actually really proud of myself for continuing to play my A game and sticking through it. I was actually up
from Hold'em and PLO, about $1,000 in the middle of the night. So I don't want to be results oriented, and my main goal was to just put in hours, especially when a really loose aggressive fish sits down. You can't be results oriented. You just got to put in the time and put yourself in a position to be successful. And so I had a stop loss. I was very close to hitting that stop loss, and if I lost that last 500, I was done. But thankfully I felt good. I continued to stick with it, and I ended up winning about $1,000 after I bought in for that last amount. And I feel like I'm growing a lot as a professional poker player in just these last 2 months that I've been playing full time again. In the past, I would have most likely gone on tilt and put my whole roll on the line and just bought in every day or bought in every time for heaps. Because in the past, I was really bad at managing my bankroll. So what's next? Tomorrow I'm going to take the day off, or today I'm going to take the day off. And tomorrow I'm going to play Sunday tourneys on ACR. I'm going to try and stream that for you guys and get some interesting hands out. Hopefully I make a final table. And then Monday I'm going to continue playing cash at Commerce or Hustler Casino. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed my hand analysis. If you guys liked it, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. And I will definitely see you on the next video. Peace.